welcome, guys. We're doing the WTC Captains Roundtable for the podcast. Why don't we go around the table and introduce everyone? My name is Brandon, or Mutilus on Discord.
My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Sooner on the Discord.
Charles, also known as Omnis.
And this is Aaron. I go by Treffinwood.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to do this. If your schedules are anything like mine, you're getting very busy about now. Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Alrighty. So we're just going to do some quick question and answer panel today for kind of the thought process we go through for the WTC stuff for people that are interested in what's like to be on the WTC teams. So I guess first question, just get to know us. Which games did you guys play before MCP, if any at all?
I'll go first. I came from War Machine was my main game. After I stopped playing War Machine, I dabbled a little in Age of Sigmar and then a little bit into Star Wars Legion, and then found MCP and pretty much been playing that since and haven't looked back.
Cool. How long ago did you play War Machine? I never knew you in the War Machine community, but it could have just been your ships in the night.
Yeah, so you remember Carl Jones?
This sounds extremely... Yeah, Carl, yeah.
Yeah, Carl. I played on, I think, a WTC
Yeah,
team or two.
He lived in KC for
when
a
he
few years.
moved. Yeah, when he moved to Kansas City, I had just started about 6 months before
That's cool.
that.
Yeah, he never told me that he knew you, but I think he had already moved away before I met you. So
yeah, and so I played for about 3 or 4 years, and then stopped when it kind of died.
Yeah,
basically. Yep.
Cool.
Well, for me, I actually got into minis games over Star Wars minis by Wizards of the Coast, and that was actually nuts when I think back to we were doing 2 tournaments a week, like every Wednesday, every Saturday, and like the Bellevue community for that game was nuts. But I never traveled. I didn't really have the appeal at the time. Like I couldn't we were just playing so much. It was such a blast, and then that game died. And I tried a couple other things here and there, and nothing quite had that right feel to it. Tried Hero Clicks for a little bit, but that exacerbated all of the normal problems with alpha strikes and miniatures. And then I saw one of those game magazines, and it had the Scorn versus Trolls on the front of it, and I was like, oh, this looks cool. And so that got me into War Machine, and I hit War Machine super hard. Did my first convention in 2011, and then that was I cannot do this just once a year. That led me to traveling for War Machine and eventually doing a WTC for that game. And then I played that in 2016-ish, took a break, came back for about a year, and then right as I was kind of having this lull because there wasn't anything coming out for the team that I played, Pagani shot me a message and was like, "Are we going to play MCP at LVO?" And I was like, "Yeah, I should actually pick up this game." And as soon as I played my first game at MCP, I was like, "Holy fuck. This is what having fun playing a miniatures game is like." And outside of dabbling in Shatterpoint, it's been pretty hardcore MCP since right after the game came out.
Cool.
And then I picked up minis gaming kind of in the 90s. Not super hardcore, a little 40K through the 2000s. My kids finally got old enough that I could dedicate more time to it. So in 2016, I hit Blood Bowl really hard with my son, and went around the San Antonio area at the time to different game stores and just see what was going on. And really liked the War Machine community that they had. A bunch of guys were really, really good, and the game system was pretty good. And Mark III just came out. So I played War Machine competitively all the way through Mark III. Up until it stopped being a thing in Kansas City. And then as I was hosting a War Machine tournament for which we had zero people show up.
Zero people outside your car.
Brandon was like, I've got this I've got this other game. Would you like a demo? I'm like,
I really drug him into it.
So then I picked up MCP.
I was like, I finally lassoed him. I'm like, you're playing this. He's like, oh, fine.
So right now I play Blood Bowl and MCP competitively.
Awesome. Alrighty. Let's see what's next. So that also covers, everyone covered how long they've been playing MCP. So I guess moving into the next bit here. Obviously, the huge announcement of WTC being including MCP as well. There was a mad dash scramble to form teams as quickly as possible. What things did you guys prioritize when looking to select teammates? Obviously, there's a long list of great qualities, but did you focus on any one thing more than others?
I mean, no, not really. Basically, it was kind of sprung on. It was the first year, and it was kind of just seeing if there was going to be enough people to go.
Mm-hmm.
I am good friends with a couple of community members who are on my team that, kind of immediately we were, are you going? Do we want to go? And then from there, it was just finding a few more players that were wanting to go. And then I know kind of early on, me and Omnis got in touch a little bit because we were kind of putting numbers together on how many people would be willing to go and could we make 2 teams and kind of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, it was. I remember when it was first announced, I was like, "Oh man, is this something that I'm even going to be able to do?" And I remember like looking up the
Mm-hmm.
flights for Denmark.
Yeah.
Like, how expensive is this going to be? And I think the first person that I talked to about it was DeLuca, because he just travels so much. He just seemed like a very strong player, and I was just like, "What? Do you have any interest?" And he was kind of like, well, maybe, but then he was worried that like Sooner and Sploosh wouldn't be into it, and so we kind of started there, and then all of a sudden Sooner and Sploosh were both
Mm-hmm.
like fully in, and then that's when I was like, okay, now it's starting to seem like there's, even just in this like early stage discussion, that there's going to be at least a couple of teams, because I remember early stages, because DeLuca had said that Sploosh and Sooner were most likely out. I had messaged, I was putting out feelers, so I hit up like Nate, Ghost Deer, and Zach, just trying to like see who was even in the conversation, who would be interested in going. And those guys were like, well, we've got this wedding for and second win, so it was like, okay, well, what do we do? And then when it started like putting together a team, I'm trying to think back, because it was such crazy, because it was right around Adepticon, and it was kind of like what, because you're looking for people who are going to be committed, right? Because you can't like build a team and then have someone drop out at the last minute, because when I went with WTC, like not in my team but in the other team, someone dropped like almost last minute, and we had to get they had to get like special approval for what to do with that person, and like that's just chaos to have happen at the last minute. So it was mostly like, who are some really strong players? And honestly, if there was anything that I tried to prioritize, was potentially hitting at least like a different community a little bit, where like Blair for my team is further up north, Danny is Oregon, I'm Seattle, and then Amon representing for Houston, and then Alec for California. Like it was pulling players from different communities, because there was a lot in the War Machine days where it really just felt like it was like, all right, and this one store for this like one city is a WTC team, and like that was that. I think that can have kind of a negative impact on people. So I think just wanting to not have it just be like a bunch of people all from the same store was probably the biggest priority for me. But yeah, it's just people who wanted to go. That's really the thing.
Yeah, and it was, and I don't know if this is true for Omnis, but I mean, it was even a little awkward, right? Because like everybody's having their own DM chats, and like there's not like a universal thing here. So it's like, well, what do you think? What do I think? So it was just kind of awkward. There's no like committee that can choose a team. So it's like, I don't want to step on your toes or this guy's toes or anything like that. And so yeah, it was, honestly, a little awkward at first. And then we kind of made a little Discord team that was like, look, let's just get all the people who are interested in going in one chat. So this gets a little more clarity. And then kind of go from there. Because it was, there's no committee, right? So it's just it's hard to just.
And to be fair, nobody wanted a
Mhm.
committee choosing this for anyone.
Correct.
I know at one point I had heard people saying like that they thought that I was putting
Mhm.
together stuff, and I was like, I really just wanted to
Mhm.
start a team and be like, hey, this is the first WTC. I think I'd be sad to miss it. And that's kind of where things started. And then it was just, it just seemed like overnight it went from, are we even going to be able to make a team, to now we probably have like 6 or 7 people who are interested in going. And so then it was
Yeah.
like, okay, now there's some like dividing up who's going to go where. And it was just like, it was absolutely was awkward. And I think because there wasn't a whole lot of preparation, you kind of needed to lock it in
Mhm.
soon. And yeah, it was kind of stressful,
Yeah.
to be honest. Like it was a difficult way to start off the whole thing. And then it was just like, and like every time I reach out to someone, right, you're like, well, you're interested, but can you go? How long to
Mhm.
give you to commit before we have to select someone else, right? Like, because we're like hitting the window of like making the team deposit and like committing that we're gonna go, but do we have
Mhm.
5 people? Anyway, it's a lot, and I hope future teams can be a little bit more prepared for it.
So I'll go through my experience, and then I really want to talk about this a little bit more if we have time. But so I got the message when I woke up like 6 a.m. that morning because Gil posted it at like
Yeah.
2
Gil
a.m.
time.
his
Yeah.
because it was his time, overseas. And I went and grabbed a cup of coffee, walked down to my computer, and wired Gil $500
Yep.
bucks.
You were
He
fucking
knew
in right
immediately
away.
there was
That's
no
cool.
blink
That's
we're
cool.
going.
So-
Like,
And that's
yeah.
I didn't have a team. I said, "Fuck it, I will make a team."
at least 4 people in the U.S. want to go.
And
Respect.
that was
Yeah.
and that's kind of because what you're talking about. Like, I am by nature
Yeah.
a rule follower, but I also know that I'm less known in the community than say either of you gentlemen, which is fine. But if there is a committee that's going to have to make some decisions about people going in the next 2 weeks, like it's going to be assholes and elbows. It's just going to be who knows who. And I was like, well, screw it. There was no. I understand from Gil's perspective, like he can't make decisions on who the 3 teams from the U.S. are. He expects the U.S. to handle that.
It's a lot harder to tell somebody that you
So
already are holding their money that they can't go.
Yep. So I was like, fuck it, we're in. We'll figure it out. So I think going forward, if there are more people that want to do this, there needs to be some way to adjudicate who gets to go, right? Because it should be kind of a share the wealth. Like I'd never been. That's kind of why I wanted to experience this, because I never got to go in War Machine. I wasn't, part of the in crowd. I wasn't good enough at the time, let's be honest. I got good enough by the time I got done.
But then it was pretty much imploding on itself at that point.
Yeah, just when I stopped. So
anyway,
Well,
I think they.
I'm going to say
I
an
think,
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think they either need to just as many teams that want to go can go, but they may be limited with space in that way,
Right.
especially with Europe.
That was the
wanting to send a
that
lot
was
of
the
teams.
issue.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, when I was signing us up, I was kind of like, what happens if there's more than 3 USA teams that want to go? So,
Yep.
Well, Gil straight up said at first, he was like, whoever sends me money
Yeah.
first is going. And so, but I'm going to say an opinion. I don't know if this will be popular opinion or not. But with all of the drama on like how War Machine handled this stuff, unless you're unless you're the defending champion team, I think all new people should go. If you went the prior year, so like if say for example like my team does not win, I think it should be a totally fresh new group that gets to go. If Sooners team wins, fuck yeah, you guys go back, defend, try to go back to backsies. But if none of us win, I think it should be a whole new group of 15 fresh people. Go get that experience. That's my personal thought. But I'll leave it up to other people to decide who gets to go.
I think that's a good way to look at it overall. Like obviously this is a unique experience that a lot of people want to have, and just because you didn't go the first time doesn't mean you don't want to go. Like maybe you didn't get in time, or you just wasn't in the cards that year. And then like because of that, it kind of became this repetitive same 10 people every time thing, and it was like it just forced all the new people out. So it sounds like we've got a lot of discussion that we would like to keep doing here. So I'm gonna ask a couple more things and give a couple more viewpoints. We'll go.
Let me toss one more thing in on this one, Brandon. Obviously I didn't team captain for War Machine. And so like what I've learned through this process, and I think it's a little bit more complicated for MCP with like managing who gets which characters and such, like adds a whole nother layer to it that we didn't have to deal with before. But being a captain is a whole fuck lot of work. And it makes me wonder, thinking back, like, did some of these players that we lost in the War Machine days, like, did this stuff burn them out? Like, how many times can you do WTC and it just gets to be too much? Like, keep people fresh. Anyway, that was my last
Being
thought
a captain is definitely a whole different, ball of worms. And like the amount of logistical prep that we personally have done on our team has been absolutely staggering, like for the amount of time it takes up. And so like if all that's being done by one person on the team, I think that's absolutely crazy to expect them to do it on a yearly basis. So when it comes to the WTC, obviously when Gil announced the MCP was being included, it was like a hand grenade went off in the community, right? Like everyone immediately started scrambling. Like you guys said, we had no infrastructure in place to prepare the community to select the teams, decide who can go, even form teams. And so it kind of became this, like Sooner said, everyone's in these private Discord chats, sending messages to each other, trying to figure out what's going on. And like, but I think it's fair to say all of us didn't want to be exclusive to anybody. It was more of a, just like, you don't want to say, hey, we have 3 spots and get 100 applicants. Like that just creates a bigger problem. And so,
well, didn't I send Aaron or England your guys' way? Like it's all
we
kind
had
of a
talked
blur
to
to me
him,
now.
and
But I remember when we were starting,
we were looking for our 5th person for a while because we had like 2 people that were like, I'm very, very interested. I just need to figure out if I can swing it. And it was this long, like, back and forth with the wife, taking a family trip to Europe. And it's just like a whole mess of worms. And so I totally get that it's hard to commit to something like that. So my question for you guys is, what would you like to see moving forward? Because we have in the past, looking at War Machine, because we all have War Machine experience, the community became, or the committee became kind of an exclusive right thing. Like it was basically a popularity contest of who got to go. And so whoever got to go the first time usually just kept getting to go. And what do you think you would like to see for building teams in the future? Like, should we create a public Discord where you can put yourself forward, or do you think that there should be unlimited teams for the US as long as we can create 5-man teams, they get to keep going?
I would like to see unlimited teams for the US personally. I mean, because here's my problem is it would be great if there was a committee, but who's any of us to say this should be the committee, right? I mean, we're all just a bunch of nerds playing a war game.
Yeah.
Like none of us are, I'm not any better than Omnis or Aaron or you to be like, oh, I should be the committee and I'll decide who gets to go to WTC. I mean, I just don't think there's really a way to create a committee, because we all know in War Machine that's what they did, and it was a popularity contest. The same guys, no matter what you did that year playing, mostly a lot of the same guys went year after year, and that's fine because those guys are sometimes those are the more competitive guys. And you look at this year, I mean, we couldn't even get more than 3 teams to go. And that could be the case every year. I mean, Marvel is big, but Marvel's no 40K or AOS. So you may only be able to get that many guys. And so same people may want to go. But I think if you open it up to unlimited US teams, I think that kind of fixes the problem. But then does that kind of get into the same buddies go every year? I mean, like this is my first year and I don't know if I'll go again. Because I'm in like your buddies that you just talked about, talking with the family and family trip. I'm in that same boat. And so I don't know if I'll ever go again, but I always would like to have an option of going again. I mean, obviously I met Pat at Adepticon and I know a lot of these guys from TTS from playing, Top Cut.
Anytime you get to see Norbert, it's pretty good.
So like
Norbert's just a sweet dude.
I don't want to shut myself out or anybody else who goes this year. So it's just hard. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't.
Yeah, I will say this is not something I put a lot of thought into because I saw what happens with the committee in the War Machine days. I don't want to do anything like that for this, and it's definitely not something I'm going to volunteer for. But I think there's whoever's going to decide or make the decisions, you have two paths, and if you want to put together really good teams, like, so the year that I went is actually, like, for War Machine, I don't think any country ever did better than first and third. And the way that happened, I think, was because there was two guys who were not playing, who basically were both incredible players, and they constructed two teams themselves. They were just like, let's construct a team, and they made specific decisions based on player skill and what, like, their different factions that they played and such, and they constructed two teams, and it worked. But is the priority for WTC to put together the absolute best teams possible, or is it about having the experience of the event? Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I really just think that people should have the experience. So to elaborate on what I said earlier, it's not that I think that, like, if any of us wanted to go again, we shouldn't be able to go again. But I just think, like, next year should probably be a year off and let other people go. And if you get 10 people and then you got 5 more spots, then sure, take any of the people who wanted to go this year again. But then, 2 years down the road, could be all of us just decide to go back together. Like, that's in theory what I was saying. But I'm going to leave this up to more devoted people to figure out what the American plan is going forward, because I don't envy whoever has to be put in that position.
And I think that is probably the biggest question that Omnis just posed. And I just don't know how you come up with an answer to that. But is it we want to send our 15 best players we can send? Or do we want to just send people over to have an experience? And I mean, how can you answer that question? I mean, everybody's going to have a different subjective answer to that, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's a hard question to ask or answer.
For sure.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. Do you think the teams that we have formed right now are the best teams we could have formed if we wanted to have a USA champion at this WTC?
No.
Okay. I don't think so either.
I mean, I'll be honest. People can hate me for that answer, but I mean, no, I don't. I think that any of these 3 teams that the United States has can win. I've played most of the players that are going, and they're all excellent players. But I mean, I think you have to answer no to that question.
I think that's a fair answer, because I think none of the teams struck out to go, we are only going to try and include the 5 best players in the country. I think everybody went, like, player skill is in the matrix, but it's also like personality, flexibility, dedication to the team, stuff like that. Like, if you're just cherry picking the best players, I don't think any of the teams did that. I think everyone had obviously you don't want to be on a team with necessarily some you don't like, but you're also representing America. So you want to bring people that are going to represent your country well, and not just on the tabletop.
And I'll put Nate on the spot. I think Nate Ghostier is one of the best players in the country, and none of us have him on our team. So, like, right there, I think Nate's better than me. And so, like, there are definitely better people that could go, but obviously just doesn't work out for them this year, don't have the interest. There's a lot of factors. I think we put together 3 very strong teams. But yeah, I would say I agree with Sooner that is there a pool of players that could potentially be even stronger? Yeah, I think certainly.
And
even amongst the teams, I think we could have, again, we didn't do this ahead of time, but we could have massaged the 15 we have. I don't think either one of our 3 teams has the 5 best of the 15 that are in the mix right now.
I mean, I think that also it's so subjective. I mean, unless you're Pat Dunford, trying to name.
Can we recruit Morgan? What's more? I think Morgan's playing Shatterpoint.
Yeah, he doesn't play anymore. But I mean, I think trying to name we don't really in America have players who have just, dominated events like, say, Pat does over there or anything like that. I mean, you have lots of people who win lots of things. You have lots of people who have a lot of success. Some people have played longer. Like, I have a pretty good resume. I've played for a very long time. I mean, I've played I started playing about 5 months after launch. So yeah, I've won a lot, but I've played a lot.
Mhm.
Like there's other guys who have come in and haven't played as long, but they've had some good success. So who's to say who's better or
Yeah.
who's worse? I mean, it's just subjective as hell.
Totally agree.
Well, it's also who's the most motivated
Yeah,
in this
Yeah,
moment,
that's true.
right? Like, you know, we saw when like DeLuca won LVO, right? He was unemployed at the time and he was knocking out games. And then Vince also unemployed going into LVO. Like when you like have that extra motivation or time and you get to play extra, like it shows.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you could be a really, really strong player, but does your schedule work out where
Yeah.
you get in quite as many games? Like, you're going to have a work complication a little bit before WTC that keeps you really busy. Like, who knows? There's all of those factors that make the difference. Because we've all played a game of MCP, right? Where you play it and you just learn something really specific about that matchup. And like my last game, I lost a mirror match, and it actually made me step back and go, oh, I'm over prioritizing retaining priority. And that like one individual loss just pointed out something to me in this moment about how I was playing in that moment that could change and like completely change a game for me down the road, for better or worse. So people's motivation to like how hard they're going to play at a given moment is a huge deal.
Yeah. All right. So next up, would you like to see the U.S. adopt something similar to the ATC style, where you can we have basically a local American team championships, and then the winner of that event is offered one of the selected amount of WTC slots for that year's team?
Hell yes, I think that would be I think that's. I don't think USA did much good when it came to how they did WTC and War Machine. I think that was the one thing they got right.
Cool.
And I think it's a cool concept, and I think it's very good. I played in ATC my last competitive year in War Machine, and my team got third. The team who won it was Team Canada, and the team that got second was the team that beat us, our one loss. And they were guys that nobody had ever heard of. There was a team, I think they're all fairly well known now in War Machine. I don't know, I haven't been out of the community a long time, but at the time, no one really knew them. And it was awesome to see that team win. And then they went to WTC and, you know, had a good time and a good showing. So, yeah, I think that it's a great, event or pattern.
Cool.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. And maybe it's just because when I got into the War Machine, like I really struggled affording a fair amount of the travel. And I think there's a lot of things that like, if you have to be in a position where you can afford like this particular con, or like where you're going to an American team championship, and be able to afford going, you know, to international travel, I think there's an element of that does just naturally cut some people off, where you're like, you've got to, one, if you have a difficult financial situation, that might be your only two cons, or like, can you afford to do both? But how do you manage all that stuff? God, I just don't know what the right answer is like, there's pluses and minuses to all of it, and who you did, like whatever you decide, or whoever decides something, it's always going to benefit some people and hurt other people. Like there's no way around that. And so how do you decide who are you choosing to benefit? I don't know.
I got news for you, Charles. That's called life. Right there.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Everybody, someone's going to have the short stick. Someone's going to not have the short stick. What about
I don't want to be the one who decides who gets a short stick. That's
yeah, no, I get that. What about Aaron's sage? I want to hear his sage wisdom on this.
He's calling you old.
Yeah, I know. He's not wrong.
Here's an opinion I have real quick, though. I think we should divide the people that are unemployed into a separate category for War Game tournaments. That way I don't have to play Aaron anymore.
Yeah, I am good friends with Mike. I talk to him on a daily basis, and he will openly admit, he's like, man, I'm trash now that I'm not unemployed. He's like, man, when I was playing like
25 games
many games I was a lot better. But it's funny to hear him say that.
Well, whenever you hit a point where you're like at a peak, And this is why I like took a break from War Machine at a certain point, because it switched to Mark III. And I knew how good I was when I was playing all the time and doing tournaments every week. And then when like the game changes dramatically and you don't have the time commitment to do what you did before, you're not going to be as good as you were. And then it's like, well, do I want to do this? And I'm sure like there's an element of that for like DeLuca at the moment, where he's like, he knows how good he can be when he's playing 20 games a week, and then recognizes that he doesn't feel like he's on that level. And like that's a challenge that kind of like everyone who has that competitive drive hits at different points.
And obviously, we're not putting Mike down. He's one of the best players around.
Yeah.
It's just funny to hear him say that.
Yeah, I think we should put him down.
I mean, I will too. Come on, but trying to do some good PR here.
All right, Aaron, what are your thoughts on the ATC concept?
I'm relatively ambivalent, although I think it would be, if I had to vote like right now, giving one slot to a team that wins the ATC and keeping the other 2 slots open for other teams, I think would be totally fine. So it kind of solves both issues, right? So you don't have to win the ATC to go. So if it's your only con that you can go to, it's not a big deal. On the other hand, it does reward a team that's able to get together and practice and perform and then represent the U.S. at the top level. But what I would say is, I mean, Charles keeps talking about, whoever this person is or people that are going to decide things next year. Well, that shit needs to happen in like the next 2 months.
Happens quick.
And what my fear is that no one's going to do it, and it's just going to be a shit show come February when they announce WTC next year, and we're going to be like, is it people like me who are just like, fuck it, here's $500, Gil, I'm in? To be honest, I think that's wrong. But I also think I knew that this year, like there wasn't time for anything. It was a free for all. So I would love to see a group of individuals get together to form some sort of a committee, whether we call it a committee or not, that has a charter to keep the global community in mind, if that makes sense. And I don't know how well that works. It's like an enlightened despot. Like you hope they do the right thing, but the power is all in their hands.
Illuminati, not the committee. That'll fix everything.
A benevolent dictator is a perfect political system.
What could ever go wrong?
Absolutely right.
Benevolent being the key word.
Yeah, right. If you have a benevolent dictator, then it's great. You're like, oh, this is awesome.
So just a quick recap. So I participated in the Blood Bowl World Cup a month ago. And I just threw my name into the hat, and they have kind of a
committee. He's trying not to say committee.
So what they do is they select their coaches, like for the team, and that coach will select their players. So I ended up playing on what was the second-ranked U.S. team, despite never having really met the people on that team, if that makes sense. Like I had played one of them in a tournament, and they were impressed with my play, and then they went onto my standings page and were like, this guy's really good. And so Blood Bowl, I think, does it pretty well in terms of it's not a people that they'll take into account, like, what did this guy do over the last year? What teams are they proficient with? How could they help the team? And I kind of got drafted onto that team. It's not a perfect system.
The team captain system works well when that happens. I think what we saw in War Machine was a lot of it eventually got to the point you select captain and then the captain selects their 4 friends.
There's a lot of
and so that's what needs to get avoided. Yes.
I mean, I also can't blame on the same side, because don't you want to do this experience with people you really enjoy? Like, this is a lot of work to build and craft 5 lists with, and you have to have a level of rapport. It's a big risk to do this and be like, I'm just going to grab this guy Aaron that I played once with, and he does well. Like, and I'm going to hope that I can like negotiate with Aaron, like, oh, do you need Crimson Dynamo for this list? Or, like that, there's a whole level to doing this for MCP that, makes it, you need to have people that you can work well with.
And then you run into the problem of so are those committee members, what if they want to go? You have to have committee members who are not going, right? Like,
or else it's hugely biased.
Or there's going to be people yelling from the rooftops that there's bias. So I said it's very difficult. And I mean, how do you get this committee? Do you just leave it up to a vote or democracy? I mean, do you go into the Discord and you say anybody who's American who is even remotely interested in this or at all, like, do you vote on 4 people that you think would be the top people for a committee? I mean, I don't know. How do you even come up with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard place to be. Obviously, there's no perfect system, and we'd like there to be one.
Yep.
All right, moving on to our next topic. Originally, so this is back in April timeframe, when once you've got your teams locked in and you knew who your 5 were going to be. Obviously, having restricted characters puts in a fun challenge for everybody. With the character restrictions in mind and the current meta, what kind of helped you make decisions towards what affiliations you were bringing? Like, was it primarily just what your players felt comfortable with? Did you try to select powerful meta teams? Did you try to counter the meta? What went into deciding your original 5 affiliation matchup?
A mini extravaganza.
Well, this is before that. This is originally.
Yeah, I mean, so originally before mini extravaganza, it was, I mean, mostly probably what we felt the strongest affiliations were. I mean, I have a couple players on my team that jam a lot of games, so it was, you can get them to play whatever affiliation and they will get very profound with it. So I think it was originally just kind of, hey, let's get some strong teams. And obviously, I mean, the number one thing as me as a captain, and my captain, as the captain, I kind of leave it up to the team. I'm, hey guys, what do we think here? Like, I'm not going to order anybody around in a miniatures game. So it was obviously my number one thing is I want people to play what they want to play. Right. And then of course we have 5 competitive players. So like, they're not going to want to play Winter Guard at this event, pre-changes.
There is a Winter Guard player, just
flat out.
Did you hear me? I said pre-changes.
That's true. Pre-changes. Whole new world now.
Yeah, it's a whole new Winter Guard.
Sooner, rule. If you play against the one Winter Guard guy and lose,
you'll have to retire from the game.
There's going to be a whole YouTube channel.
After this conversation, as the team captain, I will make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, me too. I've told Aaron that. It's like, if you put me in a bad matchup, I'm taking the other guy. Like,
but yeah, so we chose. I mean, based on strength for the most part, and then what people wanted to play, and we combined those 2 things.
Nice.
Yeah, so we started off kind of expecting that there was going to be changes at some point, not knowing exactly what. Like, a lot of people had heard rumors about errata there, but there's always new releases, and so we were kind of in a position of going, something's going to change, whether it ends up being new releases or something. Like, so let's just keep an eye on the game, test out things. And then it started hitting a point, like, before we knew about the core set, we were kind of like, are we actually just going to be playing in the June meta in October? Like, is that what's going to happen now? There's nothing
definitely
coming
creeping
out
that way.
So yeah, and so we had this point, and we were starting to lock things in, and then the core set hit, and we were really excited. Everybody got really pumped up, and we had kind of figured out 5 teams that everybody was really excited to play. And then that was a very short-lived excitement, and then suddenly it was like, okay, well, back to what we were going to do. And well, one of the biggest points for me as captain was there was this point where there was a lot of characters that I'd kind of taken the approach of divide up the Voodoos and the Crimson Dynamos and a lot of the power characters pre-errata. And then I also hit a point, I was like, okay, we also can't just water down Avengers too much. If we're going to have Danny play Avengers, we can't take everything that makes Avengers, or not everything, right? But you can't take so much that what makes Avengers good is no longer there. And so I kind of made an executive decision. I was like, okay, there's going to be certain things that we can take away from the Avengers roster. Because, obviously at the time, Danny had just won a qualifier with it. Deaton won a big event with it. Sooner you won with Avengers as well. It just, Avengers was just fucking crushing it. And I was like, I think it's a good idea to keep an Avengers player, but not water down that roster too much. And so then that inspired some things, and there was this weird cycle where we were like, okay, Danny's going to play Avengers, and I was playing X-Men, And then Alec was kind of struggling with what he wanted to play. And a lot of the things that he was interested in were just going to be short 1 or 2 characters to kind of make it work. And he had been testing S.H.I.E.L.D. when we thought he could play Iron Man, the Invincible Iron Man. And he was liking it. And I was in a camp of, I thought we should have S.H.I.E.L.D. And so I was talking with him and I was like, dude, you have no interest in playing S.H.I.E.L.D.? And he's like, nah, I don't really think I want to do it without Invincible Iron Man. I was really enjoying how that was playing, and I don't think I want to do that. I was like, totally fair. I want you to play things that you want to play. And then I was like, you expressed interest in playing X-Men. I have actually played a fair amount of S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you want to play X-Men? And I will play S.H.I.E.L.D. And he was like, all right, on board. But then he wasn't really enjoying playing X-Men because he was trying to practice without voodoo. And one of the first games he played was an X-Men mirror where X-Men had voodoo and he didn't. And he's like, this sucks. And I don't really, he didn't really want to play it in events. And we had this weird rotation of things going on. And then I was playing Avengers at one point and Danny was going to play S.H.I.E.L.D. And then the errata hit and everything went into flux. But I'll give a special shout out to Blair, because he just always made things easy. He was always kind of really ready to be the guy who's like, if you guys have 4 lists that you like, he's like, I will just play something with what remains. And I've seen him do well enough. Like when he won our qualifier in Bellevue last year, he was playing Avengers and not playing Avengers Assemble. Like the dude can just do some nutty stuff. And I know he had a great run in X-Wing as well. So I just trusted him if he felt comfortable with that. And I think that relieved a little bit of the stress from the team. So shout out to Blair. But it was kind of a chaotic mess, to be honest.
Aaron?
So for our team, you, Brandon, really wanted us to start prepping early. And I wanted us to wait because I heard scuttlebutt about errata and there's no sense in super practicing in June and July if stuff's on the horizon. And then Amna said, it comes to August and you're like, well fuck, I guess we are playing.
I've been telling you we should have been practicing.
It's not like we didn't practice, but we actually settled on some teams in August and then practiced them pretty hard, only to then have the errata change all that up. For the most part, the errata didn't hit too many things. We just had one player swap from Guardians to Suns, and some other small tweaks in the past 2 weeks that we've been working. But that was all kind of pre-errata.
Okay, well, you guys kept jumping into future questions, so everybody wanted to talk about the stuff that was shaking it up. So I guess what would you have? Obviously, you talked a bit about your S.H.I.E.L.D. change. What would you guys have done differently if the core set had been legal?
We just want to keep going with the same order.
Whichever's fine.
Well, Sooner first. Than me.
Sooner you can go first.
Okay. I don't. So if the core set would have been legal, we might. So we switched out our S.H.I.E.L.D. And if the core set was legal, we might have kept S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think it would have changed much else, to be honest.
Obviously some drop-in splash characters, but for the most
part. you might change that. I felt as the team captain, I kind of did what Blair did on Omnis's team, and I told my guys, look, you guys take the 4 lists that you guys want, you guys take the characters that you want, and I'll kind of fill my roster from whatever's left. And that's just kind of how it worked out. But I don't think the core set would have changed a lot. I think S.H.I.E.L.D. may be more of a consideration than because we switched out S.H.I.E.L.D. But outside of that, other than some splashes here or there, I honestly don't think. I think the errata was a much bigger change than the core set would have been for our teams. Because we did, I don't know if this is a future question, but we did change quite a bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that next.
Yes, we certainly did too. I agree with Sooner that I think Invincible Iron Man, good chances, the most impactful thing there. The weird thing is so I had this whole X-Men plan in my head where I was going to suddenly start testing with Ultron and be like, oh, I've got this 5 threat who I can play Age of Ultron with, and and just kind of work him into the X-Men plan. I was really excited to test it. And I remember having all of my stuff at work and I was hyped to go play MCP after work. And then I found out that that there was not going to be the core set. And like, I was very drained in that moment. Now, in retrospect, testing that would have also been pointless because the errata totally changed X-Men.
Yeah.
So maybe in the long run, it worked to my benefit that I didn't hardcore start testing this list that I'm not sure I would want to test anyway. I think if I were to make just like a random like speculation outside of Iron Man, I do think maybe one of the fives like Captain Marvel or Ultron could have shown up in some really interesting stuff that would have been exciting to see. Like, does Captain Marvel help A-Force enough? Like, Ultron, like, being this, like, little bit more of a killing machine, like, would he show up in Sons or X-Men still with, like, paying for the hop? Like, how, how does that play out? And I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, I agree with Sooner. The errata ended up affecting things way more than the core set would, but there's a part of me that is still happy that I'm not trying to figure out what the fuck to do about Mighty Steve, because I'm looking forward to not having Luke Cage stagger me like every fucking punch in this event, but that's coming real soon. So, Aaron, what about you?
We only did about 3 days of testing with the new core stuff. We're not a local meta that proxies a lot. So, we show up to the game store and we kind of play what's legal.
The local manager of our game store will ban you if you're proxying unreleased models.
He is an asshole.
Really?
Wow.
That's next level.
We have bad memories of CID. It destroyed our.
See, I ended up with
community.
the opposite experience. Yeah. Like, I was coming in to like test my WTC roster, and like it seemed like everybody was proxying core set stuff, and I was trying not to be a dick and be like, "Can you guys not proxy so I can practice against stuff that I'm trying to think about?" But like, played like 2 games against Mighty Steve. It was just like, and that's not normal. Like, it's not common that I would see people proxying in the game store. But
I'll just echo what you guys said. I think Invincible Iron Man was the obvious include. I said back in March when we first formed our team, I thought Shield was an auto include, and I'm still a little shocked that we're not running Shield. I mean, I think Shield is very solid, and I might be off base, but I just couldn't get past what I thought was both Sam Vengers and Shield needing Iron Man to have access to Helios, because neither of them, well, Sam Vengers really has a punch. You kind of keep that in your hip pocket for your bazooka when you need it, and not having that bazooka, I think, makes it hard in some matchups. So for that reason, we ended up not running Shield in our 5-man pair, but we absolutely would have had Invincible been around.
It's interesting to see what the meta could have looked like if Invincible Iron Man hits. I wonder how many Shield rosters we end up seeing versus like the semi-small amount that we did see.
I think Shield is still hard to play, and it's also not a team that's for everyone. Like, it's not a generically fun team for just the average player. So even if we had Iron Man available, I'm not sure it would have taken that big of a jump up. Maybe 10, 20% more, but it's just, I don't think Shield will ever be that team that like gets played like Avengers gets played.
So Sooner, I can't remember. I haven't memorized all the teams yet. Did you guys end up taking Shield in your final pairing? No.
We did
so
not,
currently none of the 3 US teams have Shield.
That is
you
incorrect.
Guys have Shield.
Danny is playing Shield
Nice.
on my team.
Cool. So we have 1 Shield represented. So that'll be fun.
The true American affiliation.
Shield. Not Avengers.
Uh,
All right.
Having the spy agency team is very American.
Yeah.
So throwback to some things Omnis said earlier. When the core set first got leaked or spoiled, and everyone was looking at it, I think I didn't go like more than an hour without hearing of another broken combo with Mighty Steve. And so personally, I feel like Steve would have been everywhere. Maybe even more so than Invincible Iron Man, because everyone could not stop talking about how good his leadership is. And so I guess we'll see as soon as WTC is over, because everyone's going to be ready for us. All right, so next up, obviously, the elephant in the room. 2 weeks before list lock, massive game-shattering errata. First off, what do you guys think about the errata being so close to list lock? Do you think they should have pushed list lock back? What do you guys? Are you guys fine with it being 2 weeks before? Do you think it's too close?
I mean, I would have loved to see him maybe. I mean, me personally, I can already tell you I would have made some changes in my team that I just submitted a few days ago,
Mhm.
just from testing. So I would have liked to see maybe a week or so, but I understand that you want the list in early for
Mhm.
an event like this. You want to get it out so the content is there for it, it builds hype and
Mhm.
things like that. So I understand how they want it early, but yeah, I mean 2 weeks on such a big errata, and obviously they can't control that.
Mhm.
AMG doesn't care, about the WTC of when they're going to drop their errata. So yeah, I have liked a little more time to finalize lists, sure, but hey, everybody's in the same boat,
Mhm.
so it is what it is, and those changes I want to make, I'll have to live with them.
Yeah.
I will say I am of the camp always play with the current state of the game. I don't ever want to go to a big event and play in an old
Mhm.
meta. That's me personally. That may not apply to everybody. I think the idea of going to a big event and being like the rest of the world has already moved on from the list that we're
Mhm.
playing, it would be very sad to me. So I am very glad that it got included. Even if we only had a week of prep, I still would rather be playing with the errata than not.
Yeah.
With that said, I agree with Sooner. Even a few more days would have been
Mhm.
awesome. Like, even if we just could have finished out the weekend and like maybe locked in the stuff on Wednesday or something, just like any additional
Mhm.
days would have been nice. But it was a fun, exciting 2
Yeah.
weeks.
It was.
It was well
And
blessed.
I remember seeing the errata and telling my team like I've got an Asgard list I want to put on the table, and I've got an Inhumans list that I want to put on the table. And then as soon as I started testing, I changed completely and I'm playing
Mhm.
X-Force, which I was not on my radar when I first read the errata. And so it was an exciting 2 weeks, potentially like some of the most fun I've had preparing MCP stuff. So that's how I feel.
I don't have anything different from you guys to say. I'm glad we're playing with it. It's fair and everyone has the same restrictions. So Wild West, bring it. See what people have.
Yeah. Wow, wow, West.
So talking about the errata more, do you guys have a favorite change that got made? Do you have, I mean, I don't want to start wish listing, but like things that you think should have been done instead, or how did these changes affect your teams? Obviously, Charles, you've already hit on like you change what affiliation you're playing straight up.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that they did an awesome job with the errata.
Mm.
I think that we're always going to be like, oh well, they could have also hit this character or that character. I mean, you're always going to wish list. No, I don't care who you are, what game you're playing. There's always going to be wish listing. So I think they nailed it out the park for the most part. I think they did really well. I think the changes are really well received so far in the testing that I've done. None of these changes seem too much or necessarily too little. I think it's funny. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Black Cat is dead now." Black Cat is probably better than she was before. She actually got better. So
Not
yeah,
happy
I
about
mean,
that.
so it's just interesting. I think they did a really good job with the errata.
Yeah, I'm gonna mirror what Sooner said there. Ben, the guy who's kind of running the playtest team now, he's a person I've gotten in games with. I interviewed on the show once. He's been a player as long as any of us. He was playing MCP in Zulus when I showed up the first time, like having 3 or 4 games under my belt. He was playing, and I think it really shows in the errata having a person like Ben who plays everything, plays all sorts of different affiliations, and now is coming at it. And you see these literally subtle changes, like the thing with Cable being able to re-roll the cover. Like, you don't realize how perfect that is for X-Force, like having the re-roll negate cover, unless you are playing it. And like how much that like little stuff like that, and it definitely makes me go like, yeah, this is a person who's leading the charge from the perspective of a player. And I think that's great. And I think they've got I mean, the whole AMG team is great. Like, they just added Ross as the marketing manager. They're just like taking some of the best and brightest out of the gaming community and uniting them under one company to make great games for us. So, without blowing too much smoke, just AMG is doing an amazing job. And like, this is like one of the most amazing erratas that I could have possibly imagined. So, nothing but excitement here. Sure, what I love of Omega Red also got a medium move. Sure, I love that character. But also, if some characters have to suck, it should probably be the ones that are less people's favorites.
I think you asked which specific errata we like the best. For me, that would be Voodoo. Like, absolutely stupid, broken beforehand. Now, potentially fair and balanced at a 4.
Aaron's trying to trigger me.
Otherwise, I agree with everything that Amos and Sooner said.
Cool. Yeah. I could screenshot quotes from the day of Mini Extravaganza, and I think I said verbatim. I think I forget his name. Is Ben, right? Yeah. I think I said Ben is my hero in all caps when they were explaining that Ben was behind a lot of the changes. So yeah, they were definitely doing some good stuff.
I will say my favorite thing about the errata was the fact that they were like, this is legal in 30 minutes. Like, we are dropping everything. Like, if there was an A+ best aspect of it, it was that everything was ready to go. Here's the PDF. Even if Ronan Spender costs 0 power for 3 seconds, that was the best part for me. It was just that this is all ready to go. It's active now. Go nerds, have fun. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas. And everybody was rolling dice.
Yeah, very well done on that part.
Hopefully you didn't have a league night that started an hour after the stream. It's just like Wild West, like who could get the printer working. Yeah. There was a interesting aspect. I totally agree with you. The errata being live on the cast basically was huge. The update to the banned and restricted list, however, was not legal for, what was it, like 4 or 5 days? It had an official available date. And so there was a fun snafu with a tournament in the Midwest where they were using the errata, but not using the restricted list update because it had a date on it. And so it was like, so you can play Thanos. He's just the worst he'll ever be for like another day and a half
for
this 5-day period.
Well, is that the one that that one that like the Musecast went and played in, and they were
going to, then they all bailed because it's the Musecast, so they only talk about going to tournaments. They don't actually go.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Circling back a bit, we've kind of covered the things I wanted to hit. The reason I would be very excited for an ATC style event in the US is even if it doesn't qualify a team to go to WTC, giving people that don't or can't travel internationally for wargaming the ability to go to an in-country version of WTC that has the same rules and format, I think could be a cool experience as well. And also allowing the teams that are trying to go, even if you don't win, to practice in the official format. Because I personally absolutely love team events. I think they're the most fun way to play any game. Get together with a group of your friends and, like everyone's helping everybody try and win. I think that's the most fun way to do it.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons that I was very staunch when I said, yes, I am for that, is because I only went to one ATC, but I mean, it was a blast. I had a really fun time. And so anytime you can just provide more of those type of events, I'm all for it.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, I will say this is kind of like leads into a different topic, but personally, even though, and I'm going to preface this by saying there was a group of TOs who was asked to help decide what the format should be for WTC. I was one of those TOs, and I voted for and argued for the format that we were playing. That this exact format with the character restrictions, but no tactics card restrictions, no crisis card restrictions. I voted and actively fought for this over some of the other options. In retrospect, having kind of gone through this experience, I don't think this is the best way to do a team format. And so, but there's this weirdness of, like, I was talking with Pat about it, and it sounds like a lot of his players want more restrictions. Like, they want crisis cards and tactics cards restrictions. And I don't know how it's going to ever be decided, like what is kind of the official like team format, because I mean, I would really love it if it were a little bit more of like, we do need to have 5 different lists. right? Like you don't want 5 people
Yeah,
playing the same
Sam
Avengers
5
list. That would be
like,
boring as fuck.
the most boring thing ever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it would be awful. Like any 5 X-Men, 5 anything. So it should absolutely be different lists, but compared to the War Machine experience where
Basically
it was
wide
like,
open, yeah.
hey, we're playing 5 different affiliations, and then you really like have like if you're choosing something within your affiliation, it doesn't impact the other team except from the perspective of matchups and covering for each other. And this was just a very, very different experience than that. And so if I were to like go do a team event in the US, like I know that Ghostier is working on, I don't want to like spoil things because I feel like it's been said publicly, but I know that there's some work going on behind the scenes for a team event in the US. Nice. And one of the things that was mentioned was like, maybe it'd be better to do it 3 people. Because I think 3 people with character restrictions is totally fine. Like you can easily build like 3 really good teams, and you're not going to have that tightness or like having one person who may just not get anything as good. And maybe it's just better in this new errata time period, or maybe by the time LVO rolls around, we're going to be back to feeling like there's 3 or 4 top affiliations. I mean, who knows right now? But what like if we have an American Team Championship, does it have to do exactly what the WTC format is? Like, I think there's more to figure out within that as well.
Would you mind just telling us what some of the other options were that you voted on?
Well, like there was absolutely people who wanted restricted characters, restricted tactics cards, and then everyone has to use every crisis card before they can include a second crisis card. And then there was suggestions like anything in between, right? Like, do you just restrict crisis, not restrict tactics? Do you restrict tactics but not restrict crisis cards? I mean, yeah, it was. I don't remember exactly everything that was kind of in the discussion, but I know like the final. I think the final vote was like, do you restrict tactics cards? Is essentially was the last. I think we had decided restricting crisis cards would create too many issues, where at the time it was like, dude, if you restrict crisis cards, is this like everyone going to play X-Men? Right? Like someone's got to play the pay to flips. Does that just mean every single team now? And now in retrospect, I may have come off of that a little bit. Because if you look at my team, I'm playing Meteors and then someone else is playing Spider Portals. And we easily could have given Mutant Madmen to Blair. So we probably could have made that work in a much more interesting way than maybe I realized in that initial discussion. But that was a concern I had, which was like, do you just mean that like X-Men are already one of the best teams in the game? If you restrict crisis cards, does it just mean everyone needs to find an X-Men player? And, you know, stuff like that was in the discussion. But
Aaron,
yeah, I don't feel like we found the perfect team format yet.
That's a fair point. Aaron, you had a point.
Well, I had a follow-up, I guess. Tangential, how about that? A question for you gentlemen. After the lists have been made public as they are slowly populated, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. And I'll go after you two because I have a very spicy take that's going to get me flamed, but that's okay.
So I am struggling with your question. What exactly?
What is the question exactly?
Yeah.
Okay, lists were made public 2 days ago or so. What are your reactions?
You're talking about that everybody should have to. I think I know what you're talking about. That it's unfair.
Like I'm looking at the.
Yeah, it's an unfair advantage technically that my team's list was shown the moment, 2 days ago, and there's still teams that don't have their list on there. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Not really. I want to know. I'm talking more of the composition of the teams that are known. Although you make a very good point, I wasn't going to go into, but I fully
just to jump on that grenade real quick. It's my vague understanding, which could easily be incorrect, that all the teams had submitted their list to Gil, they just haven't uploaded them to Longshanks yet. And so I believe all of the lists are hard copied somewhere and cannot be changed. And so I don't think that's an issue. It's more just that we aren't able to see their list currently. But
and they can prep for ours. We can't.
That's
prep
the
for
argument you make. Is I mean, it's an unfair advantage.
I think we can all agree.
Without harping,
I think we can all agree
it's also the players entering it, not like VTOs.
Yes.
So it's also like I don't use list builders. So Alec actually made a code for my list so I could put it in, and then he got something wrong in it. Now, it was like he put in A-Force Assemble instead of Avengers Assemble. Like, but we fixed it pretty quickly. But like it was submitted correctly on the document. But there could still be that kind of stuff where if you're trying to like hardcore prep, has the stuff in Longshanks been reviewed to make sure it's accurate? I don't know if that has or has not
won't
happened.
be reviewed ever. I almost guarantee. But I guess my question, that issue aside, which is an issue, what are your thoughts on the actual? But for instance, we thought there were like some bangers, like you have to take one of these 10 affiliations, right? And there will be some give and take, but like personally, I'm shocked to see some affiliations on the list. Period. Like I said, I want to go last because I have some spicy takes. But just looking at the affiliations and the lists that are public now, which there's probably 80% of them. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's fairly what I thought. I mean, the two top ones are Web Warriors and Guardians. I mean, if you've paid any attention to Europe at all, you know that Web Warriors are the most popular thing over there. They love Web Warriors, and I think we all can agree that Web Warriors got stronger in the errata. Well, at least that's my opinion.
Agreed.
So I don't. Guardians is insanely popular here. It was one of the most popular in the list. Avengers were popular. So, I mean, I think for the most part, it's pretty similar of what I expected.
Okay.
I mean, Guardians, not just really good, but also one of the easiest affiliations to work into this team format. They are taking a ton of characters that nobody else is trying to take, right? Like you, Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Drax, like you just have this whole list of characters where they're filling it up, and that doesn't have like any impact on other people's lists. Now you start getting to like Agent Venom and Bill, and like, but in general, Guardians is an easy affiliation to work into this format.
Agreed.
So not a lot of surprises, but also it was such chaos 2 weeks before. Like, who know? Like, I knew going into this that like I was not going to be able to predict. I'm a person who likes thinking about what I think my opponents are going to play, but I knew going into the 2 weeks of prep, I'm like, I'm going to have no fucking idea what people are actually like. Like, is there just going to be a broken ass fucking Inhumans team that someone is going to figure out in 2 weeks? Maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I mean,
respect. I'm glad you're doing
no, I
Inhumans.
mean, it's if you would have asked me just a month ago, I'm playing Inhumans, and if you had asked me a month ago, I would have said there is no shot in hell. They would be one of the lowest ones. I mean, they'd
bottom
be down
5,
there,
like of
since
things
I've
you would
already thrown Winter Guard under the bus. They'd be like down there with Winter Guard as one I would actually be playing.
Yeah.
Not only because like I didn't think they were super, super strong, but also I just had no interest in them. I had literally zero. I don't like the Inhumans. I have nothing pulling me. And I mean, look, we sit here now and I'm playing Inhumans. I mean,
I'm playing X-Force. I didn't think
X-Force
there was a hell's
below
chance
Inhumans
that I would be
on the
playing.
list.
Yeah, but X-Force are cool, man.
They're at least cool.
Yeah, X-Force does have cooler characters than Inhumans, but I would have been way more likely to play Inhumans. I actually liked Black Bolt's leadership and such. So, but like the fact that I'm playing in X-Force and it like feels good, it blows my mind. And I'm like, Deadpool is like my second most played character now. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Okay, so I'll get to my reaction. I was first and foremost blown away by the diversity of the lists. So if you go and look at the affiliations, sure, you've got Guardians, Criminals, Webs, Avengers, and then on down. But the way in which the teams combined the different affiliations is, I thought, pretty astounding. Like, there was definitely no cookie cutter, we're going to run these 5 affiliations. Like, people are running Webs with Asgard or Cabal Avengers, and some other teams are running Cabal separately. Like, so it is completely, I think, innovative to see how the different 32 teams took their character restrictions and made different teams out of them. Like, mind-boggling. I love it. So that my first takeaway was one of impression, I guess, with what people were the solutions people came up with to the answer, the question that was the WTC list creation process. The second thing that really shocked me, that you guys can please disagree with, is the number of criminals and Brotherhood players in the WTC. I think is wrong. Not because those two affiliations are bad, but because the WTC pairing process makes them bad.
I'll definitely agree with criminals on that, and we have a criminals player, and
so do we.
I voiced a little bit of an opinion, not a big one, that I didn't know if they're the best in this format. So as much as I do want to disagree, I don't know. I think Brotherhood is fine. I think Brotherhood can adjust a little bit better, but yeah, I think that's a good take. I don't think it's wrong.
Well, what I will say on the topic of criminals, I don't have as much Brotherhood experience as you guys, but Kingpin is a very skewy thing in general. And if it's your only plan, I think I agree that has the potential to get trapped. If it's not your only plan, in the case like on my team, it's one of the plans. What does that do to the pairing process when you're like, this person can do this, but they can do something else? How is that going to play out? I don't have the answers for that. I don't know until maybe that's a question for the aftermath recording of Infamous. What does everybody think afterwards? Like, is that going to be a thing that ends up being a really cool advantage? I don't really know now, but maybe.
I mean, I took a 90% version of Blair's List to LBO last year. I'm a criminal player at heart until I started dabbling in other affiliations.
Yeah.
I think it can be good, but if your opponent can negate Kingpin just through the pairing process, I think you're at a disadvantage. Like at that point, you should just be playing foes or something else. Like for example, like we've gone through every single roster and figured out who we drop into what they drop, if that kind of makes sense. And we have 3 teams that we feel are very good into criminals. So I'm not scared of that criminal matchup. I'm not going to call it an auto win because this is MCP and there are dice and there are decisions that get made, right? But I think we are advantaged into any team that has a criminal player in it. Let's put it that way.
And that could totally end up being true.
Or I will eat my words.
I have a question for you guys, because when I was like thinking about the stuff afterwards, I was curious if you had any interesting thoughts on your team composition after the final list submission. And one of the things that I noticed is that I had argued against the like crisis restriction. And then I noticed on my team, we had no crisis card taken more than twice. And there was only 3 crisis cards that we didn't include, which was Alien Ship, Scoundrels, and Mutant Madmen. And we could have easily worked those 3 in. Like there was third picks for multiple people. Like I could have taken 2 of those potentially. Like, and it was really interesting to me in retrospect thinking about that. Like, oh, we could have maybe even been more advantaged if there had been the crisis card restriction in place. And it was just an interesting thought that I had a discussion with the team. Did you guys have anything like that where like after team submission, where you had any interesting realizations about your teams afterwards?
Not really. Ours were more like, well, we all want Bill. We all want Crimson Dynamo. So it's like, how are we gonna, separate this? So, we didn't really. I mean, I'm really our only team that is has the quote unquote attrition crisis. The demons, the gamma, the intrusions, meteors combination. So really, the other 4 players all took similar crisis. So we didn't really run into that problem. We took a lot of the same stuff.
So I didn't do.
I respect the control game.
Yeah.
I didn't do a crisis comparison amongst our team. But if I had to vote, I would vote to keep it the way it is now, only because I think the list diversity is significant, and I would be concerned with people defaulting to, well, I guess 2 of us are playing Asgard and X-Men because of the paint of force. and maybe not reaching outside the box and ending up in the position that your team is now.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. I'm like, I have
Yeah.
meteors, someone else has portals, and then we could have given Madmen to the foes player and would have been spread out and would have just been fine. But yeah, I didn't mean specifically on Crisis.
Yeah.
I was just curious
Sure.
if you guys had any interesting realizations.
I would like to
after
jump
the
in,
fact.
even though I'm just a moderator. I originally, when they
Denied.
spoiled the format, because I was watching the website, when they said the character or tactics cards and missions were not restricted, I was floored. I assumed it was going to be like limit 2 on all the cards. And when I saw it was just characters restricted, I was like, wow, that's way more open than I expected it to be. And then looking at it, I was like, well, that actually makes a lot of sense, because when you go 5 deep, like, okay, so like fallback, mission objective, brace, like all those being restricted would like cause a lot of affiliations to become a lot less competitive. Like you basically couldn't include like webs and convocation on the same roster. Like there's a lot of affiliations that really need specific cards. And so I think if you were going to do some kind of and more restricted than it currently is, I feel like there should be more of like a restricted list of things that can't be duplicated. Like maybe if someone want to sit down and make like the top 10 characters that couldn't be duped, and then also saying it's like, all right, well, you can't duplicate these missions or you can't duplicate these tactics cards, maybe something like that. But with like what you were saying, I think a lot of teams would get to the point where it's like it's either easy for them to do or it forces them to play things they don't want to play. And so I think if it's easy, then it's just a lot of bookkeeping for no reason. And if it's overly difficult, like Aaron was saying, it reduces the plethora of game that we get to see at this event.
And I'm like, you could convince me like affiliated tactics cards are the only things restricted. Like you could sell me on a very unrestricted format and I would be all for it. I would really prefer if Sooner could just make a list, and as long as he was playing Avengers and nobody else was trying to play Avengers or whatever, he could just play the best Avengers list he could make. I would be all for that. And I think, and then anyone can test their list at any event, at any qualifier, at any tournament, and they're not feeling held back. Like 100%, I would get behind a less restricted format.
I mean, I'm on the record for saying that, like, I like the more restrictions, the merrier. So I was on record as saying, like, you do singleton for the whole thing, you know. But in retrospect, and after going through this process and whatnot, I really like where they came out. I think doing singleton for the crisis and tactics is not good. I don't think you should do that. I think that will it'll just create a lesser, you won't see as good MCP out there. It'll really water down the game, I think, if you're really, especially like tactics cards. And I am full agreement with singleton on characters. I think there are enough characters and enough affiliations out there, and we're only going to get more, that I think that really makes it feel much more like a team event. I think that's really our team has really worked together because of that one restriction. Whereas I think if you could just take one affiliation, I think you would just see a lot of the same characters. Like I just said earlier, everybody wanted Bill, everybody wanted Crimson Dynamo. You'd see him in all the lists. So I personally really like the way it is and really like the singleton on the characters. And I would be sad if that went away.
Mm-hmm. I highly concur. It also ensures that we can spread out who sees CGR, because we're only going to see one of them in our pairings. So we are each taking him once to the face. That's my promise.
Or you have
to the, team.
the human hand grenade that just falls on it every time.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, 75% of our discussion is, well, who the hell's going to play CGR Guardians? Yeah. I mean, so yeah.
Oh, he's not in Guardians. I mean, he is, but he is everywhere in all kinds of weird places, which is amazing.
Like, I wonder if my team is the only team. Do you guys do you guys teams have a CGR?
We do.
Yes.
We do, yes.
We don't. Look at us.
Morally superior.
Morally superior. Not functionally superior, just morally.
I mean, I'm the one who's supposed to play him, and I refuse. So
cool.
I
was
refuse to
honestly
play 'em.
surprised when I opened it up for wish listing that nobody said CGR. And I know that we're not trying to harp on models, but I can only imagine that guy's going to be causing waves very soon.
Yeah, and I think when we hit the like actual event, it's probably going to feel fresh that you're not playing against Hulk
Yeah.
every game.
Yeah.
And for the listeners who haven't been a part of like some of the discussions behind the scenes that like, because I've shared some of these thoughts in like my Discord, like it was weird just having like at a certain point we had like 3 people who wanted Spider-Woman, and then like after the errata, like we were like multiple spots we wanted Wong. It was like not your normal stuff. That was just kind of weird. Like, yeah, like I don't want to see every team having Dynamo and Hulk and Bill and like, but at the same time, it felt like there was weird affiliations that were immediately not even a real possibility because, oh, well, like this team is playing, you know, these characters. Does that mean that Webs is even possible? Right? Like it was some weird stuff that like, oh, because you're playing X, these other affiliations can't even be in the conversation because key characters taken. And that was the part that was sad for me.
So I agree.
Well, I actually want to jump in real quick. I think it would this would be fun if we go around and say what characters were the highest contention for each team. Because I actually think that we all might be in agreement here, and it's not going to be models people think.
I mean, I already answered this question. I'm pretty sure Bill and Dynamo, Black Cat, multiple people wanted Black Cat.
The funny thing, though, we only had 2 people that wanted Black Cat, and one of them got Voodoo, the other one got Black Cat.
I think that's correct with us. I think it was mainly 2 people. But I think Bill and Dynamo, I would say, in our team, because I think probably 4 out of 5 of our teams would be taking them.
That's interesting. Obnus?
For us, we didn't have as much like I would almost, I don't think I'd be playing Bill even if I could, but I probably would be playing Dynamo. And I would have gone straight X-Force and not included Avengers. But I think with some of those, like Voodoo was obviously like in the very beginning, he was probably the hardest one to like figure out who gets this character. It was a little bit easier with Bill and it was a little bit easier with Dynamo. And it was really strange. Like Hulk went into my list because nobody was playing Hulk. And that was kind of strange. But we had points where it just felt like 3 of us were constantly wanting Spider-Woman. And then there was also points where there was this one point where like suddenly 3 people were asking about Taskmaster. And like there was just really weird points where there was really weird characters that we were all kind of considering for the 10th slot. And then there were some other little issues with like 2 threats and stuff where it's like too many people wanted Black Widow, too many people wanted Bullseye, like that kind of stuff also hit. What about you, Aaron?
So Dynamo and Bill were never in contention for us, and that's because I'm the captain and I took them. I told my teammates they can take the rest of
them. That is an objective lie. People who have listened to our other episodes will know that.
Our 2 actual, when it came down to it, most contentious models were Lizard and Wong.
That's funny.
And I watched Aaron on at least 3 separate occasions try and give Hulk away. He's like, does anybody want this guy? I really don't want Hulk. Like, he's like, he's in my list, but like, I don't want him. And there was like, no, we don't want him. And he's like, but we have to take him. So leave him in there. As he's like, God damn it. Like, I just want to get rid of this idiot. It was fun.
There was a point where like 3 people wanted Psylocke too. Like there was weird characters that you would not expect. Where like people trying to solve certain things in their list, and there's just not that many. Yeah, not that many characters who do the thing that you want.
I think Psylocke's gonna be the new Logan. She's gonna be everywhere.
She's good. I love Psylocke from the get-go. Loved her.
Cool.
I'm gonna play her a lot. That's a warning. If you're listening to this and you're getting games, there's a very high probability that Psylocke is hitting the table.
Lock it up.
All right.
However, my Psylocke does not roll well. Like everybody else's Psylocke just trashes me, and then my Psylocke is like kind of just like squeaks by, like just enough to keep her in. But I know it's just my dice. It's not her. Like her kit's really good.
All right, we've covered all of my content I had. Is there anything you guys want to talk about before we wrap?
No, I have nothing.
Nobody's got questions for another team?
I asked mine.
Yeah, I posed a question. If I were to drop a goal, just period, like more so than winning. Maybe it's because there was a lot of drama about my WTC year, not me specifically, but my year had a fair amount of drama. My number one goal is that my team walks away from this and people are like, man, those guys were super clean players. They played a great game of MCP, but they were always measuring really closely. They were great opponents, and win or lose, that people feel like we brought just like a really clean, honest group of players that people that they're just going to be proud to have them represent the country. That's my number one goal.
Totally agree.
Yeah, man, I'm going to have a good time, and I think it's a unbelievably fantastic event. I think WTC in miniature gaming is the best event you could possibly have, bringing together the quote unquote world, and having cool team events like this. I don't think it gets any better than that, which is why I wanted to go.
Great.
Amen.
Always sad I missed the first War Machine WTC. Glad to be part of the first MCP WTC.
Gotta get it started off strong. All right.
Well, that's why we brought the Infamous guys. We need someone to ringer this shit.
I mean, I'm going to be blackout drunk on Saturday, so I don't know what's going on.
That was Scott Ray.
That sounds right.
That dude got hospitalized.
Literally had alcohol poisoning and almost died.
Yeah. And somehow the Irish got video of the experience.
I bet they did.
The exact moment he needed hospitalization.
What days is everybody getting in?
Monday before, I think. Maybe it's Tuesday, because I'm leaving on Monday. I think I arrive on Tuesday.
Oh, wow. You're getting there really early.
That's early? Like, half my team is arriving, 4 days before.
Really? They're going to be there for, a full week?
Wow.
Yeah.
Most of my team is showing up, for the tournament.
Yeah, we'll be arriving, I believe it's Friday morning. And so we'll have most of Friday free, and then, tournament. And then we're staying till Monday, leaving Monday afternoon, I think.
Nice. I'll have to hit you up on this. I think I get in on Wednesday, so.
Yeah, I'll be around exploring, and I'm staying I think I'm leaving, the Wednesday after. So I'm trying to have a little bit of time to explore. I had the PTO, and I don't have kids, and so
I stretched it as
trying to explore a little
as far as I could without just straight getting a divorce. So my wife is not. It's funny because when we first talked about it, I obviously went to her and was like, "Hey, I want to go to this," and she was like, "Yeah, go." And then the more it got closer and closer and closer,
she's like, "Wait, did I say yes to that?"
Yeah, no, fuck this bullshit. And so now that it's very close, she's like, "I hate you. I'm going to hate you until you get back."
That's funny.
I'm using this whole fall as a bonding experience with my son. Yeah, we went to Blood Bowl together, played on different teams, but that was a week and a half, and this is his first semester of college.
Nice.
So bringing him to WTC and missing college again.
Look at it this way:
tried to minimize the reasons for failure that are mine.
You can always buy him another semester of college.
Yeah, man. Missing class is not a big deal.
Can't buy him WTC with his father. Well, I guess you could, but it would be very convoluted and expensive.
Already was.
Yeah. I guess you're kind of triple dipping because you're buying him this semester, then you're buying him an additional semester, and then you're also buying him the trip to Europe. Alrighty.
Aaron, is that a picture of Thagrosh in the background?
It is.
You're missing his 4 completely painted factions in the shelves behind him that he gets to look at, collect dust.
I was going to say, well, you ain't selling them unless you want to take a 90% hit.
At least.
I refuse to sell any miniature I've ever painted.
Nice.
I used to...
It's becoming a storage problem.
I was going to say, yeah, that's...
I used to be of the opinion, never sell any miniatures ever. You'll always regret it in the long run, especially if you put any kind of time into them, as models or painting. But I got off of that when I finally said never again, and I just washed my hands of GW products. I'm just never again. I'm just getting out.
I found out that the guy I sold my Crix army to back in Lock and Load 2012 is still playing minis and plays MCP, and I was chatting with one of his locals and realized I'm like, oh, Pierce, shit, does he still have my my Lich King themed Crix army? And he does, and he still has it. Great. And I was like, that's nuts. I don't regret selling it. I don't want to look at it because I'm sure I will not feel good about my painting.
I want to say it was
10 years ago.
2015, I want to say. I sold my entire orc army to the guy at Adepticon that has the 24-hour booth by the 40K hall. And so he buys used minis and flips them. And so he still has like 10% of I had an enormous orc army. And so I just go and visit them once a year at Adepticon because he's still got like 20 models that I gave up like almost 10 years ago now. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's my war bike war boss. And, like, this is my old dreadnought. And it's like I look at him and wander off.
Yeah, I want to talk about War Machine regrets.
There you go. Yeah. Woo!
No
Love
regrets.
that. Yeah, that's a no regrets.
Nope. And it represent anyway. Without going, it's tabletop gaming representation in general. But yeah.
Hey, if it still means something to you, it's not a waste.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed. This has been Brandon or Muteless on Discord.
Later, nerds.
So what are we going to call this thing?
I got it. Okay. Incredible, new, fantastic, astonishing, mighty, original, uncanny, sensational podcast.
I'm just going to put down infamous.